The next principle we want to talk about is called the principle of potency. Now, the principle of potency is formulated as no potency can actualize itself. Now, colloquially, we would say that from nothing, nothing comes. In other words, something that potentially could be hot cannot all of a sudden become hot on its own if it's not already got that in some capacity or doesn't have some energy in order to render itself hot. If it doesn't have that, and that's what a potency is, it potentially could have it, but it doesn't actually have it. If it doesn't actually have it, then it can't actualize itself. Now, this is an important point because the idea that from nothing, nothing comes, we see this both in science and in politics. A perfect example is this idea of everything can be free. The government can give us everything that's free. Well, that has to come from somewhere, and the money isn't just going to appear out of nowhere. And so if we don't have any money, we're not going to have any money. And even though we can print the money, then that just means that it's coming by way, it's being actualized by being printed in some fashion. But the point being is that when people say that, that basically want everything free from the government. Well, that's not how that can even work, even on a rational level, because where's it going to come from? If you don't have it, where's it going to come? It has to come from somewhere. But we also see this even in science. And I'll give you an example where this was stated in which once you hear it, you realize, well, this is just irrational. And that is based on this principle of potency, that is, from nothing, nothing comes, is when Hawkins one time said that the gap between nothing and something is so infinitesimally small that it just jumped out. Well, first of all, from nothing, nothing comes. If there's nothing there, there's nothing that's capable of actualizing the thing, so it doesn't come into existence. Second, we would never even function this way even within society. If I walked up to somebody and said, hey, give me $1 million, and they would say, well, I don't have $1 million. And I'd say, well, just pull it out of your pocket. You would say, no, that's not how this works. Well, then why can't $1 million just all of a sudden appear in my pocket? Well, we know that that's irrational. And so it's the same thing here, that there has to be something that brought things into that created these things. It had brought it from nothing into something because it had to be actual. It had to exist before it could actually cause it. So whenever they say, it just jumped out, there's two fundamental problems with that. Well, what's this it? It doesn't exist. There's nothing there. So it can't just jump out. And we tend to think as human beings, we think of the nothing as a something, and that's why we actually think that. But or can fall into that error very easily. But this principle is very clear. From nothing, nothing comes. The other part about it is that when he says that it just jumped, that the gap between something and nothing is infinitesimally small, that's not true. The gap between nothing has no limit. It's practically infinite. So to go from nothing to something requires actually an infinite power to bridge that gap. That's why there has to be a God, ultimately, based on this very principle itself. If there's anything that exists at all, then there has to be something that was either always existed and then caused us to exist, or it's the thing that always existed, that is God or us, who is caused by him. And so always remember that from nothing, nothing comes. And so when you hear people make that talk about, well, the government can just buy it, well, this principle doesn't hold that.